What's up, Packer fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Thanks for being here today. Today is part 2 of our 91 Packer breakdown, ranking them from number 91 to number 1. Yesterday, we did numbers 91 through 61. Today, we are going to be going from 60 to 31. If you missed yesterday, let me run through the rankings really quick for you. 91 to 81 was Kenneth Odumegwu, Jadakiss Bonds, Chuck Falagia, Antonio Moultrie, Jimmy Phillips, Jason Luan, Keyshawn Banks, DJ Scaife, Tyrell Ford, William Hooper, and Henry Pearson. 80 to 71 was Benny Sapp, Emmanuel Wilson, Broughton Hatcher, Deuce Watts, Kadeem Telfort, Jeff Cotton, Austin Allen, Cameron McDonald, Gene DeLance, and Chris Slayton. And then 70 through 61 was Daniel Whelan, Matt Orzik, Sean Ryan, Shamar Jean-Charles, Keandre Thomas, Ladarius Hamilton, Jake Hansen, Lou Nichols, Bo Melton, and we routed things out yesterday with Danny Etling. So today, number 60 through number 31. Let's go right away. Rapid fire. Number 60 is Dallin Leavitt. And interestingly enough, of the 4 safeties that they brought back or brought in on one-year deals, so Rudy Ford, and then Dallin Leavitt, Jonathan Owens, and Tavarius Moore, right? So those are the 4, Leavitt, Moore, Owens, and Ford. Guess who had the most guaranteed money of any of the 4? It was actually Dallin Leavitt. Here's the thing, and I've talked about this, 1,000 times now. Take the S next to Dallin Leavitt's name and basically put a T next to it because he's not really a safety, he's a special teams player. But the other thing here too is I was not super impressed for this special teams ace and Rich Bisaccia's guy and the guy that basically was granted a roster spot just based on his special teams prowess. I wasn't super impressed, at least as a punt protector. I thought one of the block punts, it didn't look like he kind of held up at the point of attack. I just kind of wanted to see a little bit more from this guy who was supposed to be the special teams guy on this team. So he did get the most guaranteed money. I do think there's a strong chance that he gets a roster spot on the 53 because of his special teams prowess, but I just want to see a little bit more out of that in 2023. All right, next on my list is Patrick Taylor, and I really like Patrick Taylor. He's kind of a, jack of all trades, but master of none. He can pass protect pretty well. He can catch the ball pretty well. He can run the ball pretty well. He can play special teams pretty well, but there's nothing that he does great. And that's the only thing that's really holding him back right now is you got to have something. And I've talked about this as well on numerous occasions of your playmaker positions need to have a few more playmakers. And I think that's where Green Bay has run into trouble in the past where we all love Mercedes Lewis and we love AJ Dillon and we love Allen Lazard and we love a lot of these guys. But at some point you got to get guys that can get the ball in their hands and just make special things happen. And those guys have not been that. And Allen Lazard is gone. Mercedes Lewis is gone. Dillon is still here. And I know he's adamantly working on that playmaking potential, but right now they need some more, more of those playmakers, especially with a first-time starting quarterback who you would ideally like to see him get the ball out of his hands and just make some play and have the playmakers make those plays, right? So I really like Patrick Taylor. He's going to be in the conversation for that number 3 running back spot, competing with Lou Nichols and Tyler Goodson, etc. But he's going to have to show a little bit more something, I think, if he wants to earn that job. Number 58 on the list is Luke Tenuta. And I think people don't really, or maybe forget or didn't, pay close enough attention to realize that Luke Tenuta at the end of last season was actually ahead of Rasheed Walker and ahead of Caleb Jones on the depth chart. When they brought players into the game and were activating players on game day, they went with Tenuta ahead of Jones and ahead of Rasheed Walker, ahead of Sean Ryan, and not the same position, but he was the guy that was getting activated. So that's really interesting. Remember, he was a 6th round draft pick, if memory serves. I believe it was the Indianapolis Colts, or maybe it had been another team. The Colts claim him and then Green Bay gets him. It doesn't matter. Ultimately, he ends up getting claimed by Green Bay, put on the 53-man roster. Like I said, it seemed like by the end of last year, he had actually jumped Rasheed Walker and Caleb Jones. Now, you may have noticed I have not put Caleb Jones or Rasheed Walker on this list yet. Spoiler alert, they're coming up soon. But I think all 3 of those are going to be competing for probably that, number 4 tackle spot, right? Bakhtiari's your 1. Then you have Zach Tom and Yosh Nijman fighting for the 2, and whoever doesn't get it will be the 3. You could, ultimately move Elton Jenkins outside if you needed to or wanted to. I don't think they're going to do that. So then it becomes, who's your next guy up after that? Is it Tenuta? Is it Rasheed Walker? Is it Caleb Jones? I'm not sure Tenuta has the most upside of those 3 players. But like I said, interestingly enough, he was actually drafted ahead of Rasheed Walker and Caleb Jones a season ago. Green Bay claims him, and then by the end of the season, he was ahead of those two players on the depth chart. So an interesting player to keep your eye on. Number 57 is Jonathan Ford, a player who I think looks in much better shape in OTAs and minicamp so far. He is trying to work out some sort of role on this defensive line that he can have something that he can grasp onto and find some playing time, and hopefully for him, a 53-man roster spot. He's probably number 6 on the depth chart right now. You've got Clark, you've got Colby Wooden, you've got Karl Brooks, you've got Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton, and then, not in order, obviously, and then after that, it probably is Jonathan Ford as number 6. And I think he has a legitimate possibility to at least be in the conversation with maybe a Karl Brooks for number 5 and trying to earn that spot. It's not like, they were drafted in all that different of rounds, right? Karl Brooks a 6th rounder, Jonathan Ford a 7th rounder, but I would give a heavy nod to Karl Brooks at this point, and he's going to probably have to prove that, hey, I'm worth keeping as a number 6 defensive lineman, or need maybe some injury to bump up the depth chart a little bit, because I would guess that they, with Lucas Van Ness potentially kicking in a little bit, I would guess they only keep 5, but if Jonathan Ford shows that he is worth keeping, they could very much keep 6 as well. All right, next on my list is Jonathan Garvin, and I've talked a lot about Jonathan Garvin and not totally understanding why he is still on this 53-man roster through the past couple seasons. Actually, when he was drafted in that 7th round, I loved that pick as a 7th round pick because he was super young and there was some real legitimate upside there. He just hasn't shown enough of that, and it's just been kind of a middling player through the last couple seasons. That being said, this league is desperate for pass rushers, and Jonathan Garvin is probably good enough to be a number 5 edge rusher on most teams. Now, some teams don't keep 5, but most do, and he's good enough to me and young enough and still has a little bit of that upside left there that he's probably worth being on somebody's 53 as a number 5 edge rusher. The issue in Green Bay is that the numbers game could easily start to catch up. If Rashawn Gary is healthy, Preston Smith, Lucas Van Ness, JJ Enagbare, those 4 are locks. So then if you're only keeping 5, you've got a Brenton Cox who could potentially make the team. You've got a Ladarius Hamilton. You've got Justin Hollins. And now if you haven't shown enough at this point, if you're Jonathan Garvin, it's really difficult to prove your point and try to emphasize that you're the one that should be kept as the 5th edge rusher. And I don't think he's going to be this year, although I have written him off on a couple different occasions, and Jonathan Garvin just keeps coming back. So I do think he's better than maybe even myself and others have given him credit for, but more of that number 5 edge rusher. And I think he does find a way on a roster somewhere, just may not ultimately be in Green Bay this year. All right, number 55 is Royce Newman. And this is a player who has had opportunities to start at tackle, start at guard. He played over 1,000 snaps in his rookie season. He looked like he was going to be somebody that maybe could take a jump in year 2 and be a legitimate starting guard for this team. And that just never came to fruition. He struggled at tackle in year 2. He struggled at guard in year 2. And right now, he's going to have to fight for his spot on this roster. And I do think his experience and I do think his overall ability to play a couple different positions is going to serve him very well. And I expect him to make the 53, but he's going to have to fight and claw for it. And it is not a given at this point based on his play when he has gotten on the field and actually been given opportunities to start. Number 54 is based off of potential in college tape alone, because I did not get to see him at all in rookie minicamps, OTAs, etc., because he was hurt. And that is Grant Dubose. Grant Dubose is a very fun player. I thought he was a steal at that point in the draft. I thought he should have been drafted around, if not 2 earlier than what he was. In fact, one of my biggest issues with Green Bay's draft is that they drafted multiple guys in the 7th round and just let Grant Dubose hang around and then finally took him at the end. But very, very fun player. Liked his tape a lot, but injuries can set back rookies very much so, and he needs to come out hopefully at the beginning of training camp and make up for lost time. I'm really, really hopeful that he's going to be able to go by then. I have no idea what the injury is. I don't think it's been reported by anyone, but he needs to get out on the field sooner rather than later. Number 53 is Jonathan Owens. This is a player who has special teams experience, who has starting NFL safety experience in this league. And as we know, safety is completely up for grabs. So Jonathan Owens has every right to be a starting safety next to maybe Darnell Savage or whoever else is a starter. And there's a real legitimate possibility that he could also be cut and not on this roster at all. So the world is his oyster. He could go out and have a phenomenal season as a starter and get a huge payday next year in the offseason, or he could just end up not on the Packers at all. So a huge wide range of events here for Jonathan Owens. I like him. I think he's going to be a potential depth piece for Green Bay, but he is going to have to show out in training camp and in preseason if he wants to show not only is he maybe capable of being that second, the starter next to probably Darnell Savage, but even if he wants a spot on this roster. Number 52 is Tyler Goodson. Here's the thing about Tyler Goodson. He's probably the third best runner on this roster. You've got Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, and Tyler Goodson. To me, he's the third best runner of the running backs on this roster. All right? But here's the thing. They don't need a runner. Jones is the runner. Dillon's the runner. They don't need a third runner. He's the third running back is not going to get running back snaps to get, to take handoffs. That's not what they're going to be there for. So it has to be special teams. And if you do get on the field, it's probably more in like a third down role, which means you also have to pass protect. And right now, Tyler Goodson has not shown a propensity to be a special teamer. He does have some kick return ability. Guess what? That spot's taken. So he's not going to get on the field as a kick returner either. And he hasn't shown a propensity for any other special teams spots. Not a gunner on the outside. He's not really big enough for that. Not any of the field goal blocking, like any of that. So that's a problem. And he's not the best at pass protection either. He's also probably the second best pass catcher of all the running backs after Aaron Jones. So he is a really good runner, a really nice pass catcher. He's got great speed. It's just that Green Bay doesn't need those, and maybe even some kick return ability. Green Bay doesn't need any of those things from their number 3 running back. So that's going to be one that's very interesting. I'm super high on Tyler Goodson, as you guys all know. I want to see him make the roster. I think that this is a player that you can find a way to help, have him help you in some way, but you're going to have to be creative. And it just means that everyone else on the roster is going to have to be really, sort of make up for the fact that Goodson's not playing on special teams. He's probably not playing his running back. He's probably not playing his other things. So it's just tough to justify a 53-man roster spot when it gets to that. All right, number 51 is Brenton Cox. And maybe this is aggressive. Maybe this is too high. And maybe he ends up just not even making the practice squad or anything for Green Bay. But there was enough there. Matt LaFleur already shouted him out. I think he's probably a 5th round pick, maybe 4th, maybe 6th, if he has no off-field issues, if he doesn't get kicked out of 2 programs. This is all up to Brenton Cox, right? If he shows that he is completely not a hassle, not a handful, not a locker room issue, not a problem off the field, any of that, Green Bay's going to see we got a free 4th round pick maybe, and we're going to keep this guy around. If he has any inkling of any issue at all, he just doesn't make the team at all. He doesn't make the practice squad. He doesn't make the roster. So this is really up to Brenton Cox, and not only what he does on the field, but what he does off the field. But the talent is clearly there. And if he does stay, stay on the straight and narrow, this is probably somebody who could have been a 4th round pick in this past year's draft. Number 50 is Rasheed Walker. Walker was a really interesting player last year. Remember, he was hurt almost all of camp and mini camps and OTAs and everything. And then finally, he gets back for the very last preseason game. And already everyone had kind of sort of written him off. And even before that, everyone was expecting him to go way higher in the draft. And then he goes in the 7th round and everyone's shocked. Everyone's like, oh, Green Bay got a steal. Then he doesn't play at all. Finally gets in the last preseason game and was awesome in that preseason game. So much so that they kept him on the 53-man roster and did not subject him to waivers, which I think was really smart. But then I think maybe he got activated for a game or two, but mostly inactive for a huge majority of the season, if not all of it, and was not basically a redshirt season for him, right? So now he's going to have to come back, prove himself all over again. But I do think there is a bit of upside there for Rasheed Walker. When I watched him in that one preseason game, I saw a world where he could become a starting tackle in this league without much imagination. So really interested to see what he can do and hopefully taking a jump in year 2. Similarly, number 49 is Caleb Jones. We talked about Luke Tenuta. We talked now about Rasheed Walker. And now it's Caleb Jones time. And I talked about him a little bit yesterday when I talked about Telford, is that this is just a massive, mammoth human being. And just words do not do it justice. 6'9", 270, 280, huge dude. And just the question is can he hold up enough with his footwork and technique to be able to handle some of the speed guys on the outside? Do you have to be more creative? Do you have to kind of use him as a 6th offensive lineman, as a mauling run blocker? Is there something that you can figure out from a way to utilize him out on the field because he's such a special human being. It's just like, how do you take that and put it into a productive football player? So that's going to be the big question. He's going to have to show that he has improved from year 1 to year 2. This was an undrafted player, so nothing is guaranteed if you don't show improvement, but he's got a lot of opportunity there, and I would put him right now ahead of Rasheed Walker, ahead of Luke Tenuta, but those 3 are going to be battling it out for that number 4 offensive tackle spot. Number 48 is Innis Gaines, who is somebody that I have a great affinity for. I think has the ability to play a little bit in the slot, which we saw at the end of last year. I think he has the ability to play some safety, which I think he could get involved in that starting safety conversation if he has a really, really strong camp. He's a really nice special teams player. He has no guarantee to make the roster, though. And we talked about all those safeties, right? He's in the same position as Jonathan Owens and Tavarius Moore and Rudy Ford and Dallin Levitt and all of these guys, Anthony Johnson Jr., they have the opportunity to start. They have the opportunity to get cut. They're going to have to figure out a way to make the most of it and try to get noticed. But it is probably a now or never, too, for Innis Gaines, right? If he doesn't show that he is ready and capable of being one of those guys, at least maybe in the starting conversation, it's probably just not going to come to fruition. And unless Rich Bisaccia uses one of his lifelines and says, no, you're not cutting that guy because I need him on special teams, which he would have to jump multiple other players to get to that spot, he's just going to have to show up at safety or in the slot or something to show his value this year to make it onto the 53, but really, really like Innis Gaines. Number 47 is Eric Wilson. This is another player who came in and was awesome on special teams last year. Played okay when he had a couple opportunities to go in at inside linebacker. He's a veteran. He's 28 years old. He's actually one of the oldest players on this team. So this is not a player who has a young developmental upside. He is who he is at this point. So it's just a question of, is he a good enough special teams player / linebacker to keep around on the active roster? You may only want to keep 4 inside backers, which would mean Quay's got one, Devondre's got one. So now it's between Eric Wilson, Isaiah McDuffie, and Tariq Carpenter. And you know what? We're just going to go a beautiful 3-for-1 right here because I have Eric Wilson at 47, Isaiah McDuffie at 46, and Tariq Carpenter at 45. And Wilson and Carpenter are the special teams aces of the two. Carpenter was awesome on special teams too last year. I think Carpenter is a little bit more unique in that safety linebacker hybrid role. He's made it to a transition to linebacker full time, but I think he's going to be more of that coverage linebacker coming from the safety position. It'll be interesting to see how he transitions there. Isaiah McDuffie is probably the most sound linebacker right now, but with limited upside. He's always going to be, that guy who has to make it on special teams and is just your backup linebacker. And if you need him to come in a pinch and play 20 snaps, he's going to be fine. Not great, not really good, but he's going to be fine. He's not going to let you down. He's not going to lose the game for you, but he's not going to win it either. So that's where he's at, and how those 3 stack up will remain to be seen in training camp, but I would put it as Wilson at 47, McDuffie at 46, and Tariq Carpenter at 45. Number 44 is Tyler Davis, a player that I am higher on than most. I know a lot of people just have a really, sour taste in their mouth about Tyler Davis for some reason. He had opportunities last year, and like in training camp and OTAs and minicamp, all the talk was about Tyler Davis. If you remember, coaches were bringing him up unsolicited, and I think there was a lot of hope for him. And then he really struggled in preseason. He still made the 53, which I think made some people upset because he struggled so much in the preseason. Didn't do a ton during the regular season, but people forget this is the player who played the most on special teams last year. The number one most snaps on special teams was Tyler Davis. And there is a real possibility that he is their best blocking tight end right now. And I don't see him going anywhere. I think this is going to be a heavy tight end rotation. We're going to see a lot of Musgrave. We're going to see a lot of Kraft. But we're going to see some Tyler Davis as a blocking tight end / just all-around tight end. And we're going to see a little bit of, obviously, Josiah DeGuara as well. But I put Tyler Davis at 44, a player, like I said, that I like a little bit more, I think, than most. 43 is Corey Ballentine. Not too dissimilar from Eric Wilson at linebacker. Veteran, not a young player anymore with a tremendous amount of upside, is who he is at this point, but a really nice special teams player, has some ability at outside corner. This is probably somebody that you kind of want in that Jarrett Bush sort of role. Your number 6 corner can play for you at corner in a pinch if you really need him to. You'd prefer he didn't need to. And in the meantime, he's just a really good special teams player. But he's kind of that sort of perfect number 6 corner. The question then is, all right, Stokes is 4, Carrington Valentine is probably 5, And then is Ballantyne good enough to be your 6? Or he's going to have to battle out with Keandre Thomas, Shamar Jean-Charles, amongst others. And with Ballantyne being a little bit older, that's going to be something that could potentially hold him back. Number 42 is Sean Clifford. He's going to probably be the backup quarterback, and that, feel how you will about that. I was actually rather impressed with Clifford in OTAs and minicamps for how quickly he sort of got down the system and looked like a semi-feasible backup quarterback, but we're going to learn a lot more in preseason to see if he actually has some upside here and what he can do. But I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised with Clifford, and I do expect him to win that backup spot. Number 41 is the kicker, and that is Anders Carlson. I mean, he's going to be the kicker, so he's going to make the 53, and you have as good of an idea as I do as to how well he's going to do this year. It'll probably depend on who the long snapper and the holder are. We talked about that yesterday. Some of that and just the, getting down in a rhythm will be very important for him. He's got a huge leg. The ball pops off of his foot. It sounds different, and he should be able to crush some balls through the end zone on kickoffs as well. But his accuracy is what's going to be the determining factor for Anders Carlson. Number 40 is Pat O'Donnell. Solid but unspectacular punter who's a really great holder. Did a nice job in the elements throughout his career. Don't underestimate the fact that kicking and punting in Chicago and Green Bay is like the worst scenario for a kicker or a punter. And overall, he's had to do that his entire career, punting for Chicago prior to coming to Green Bay. And those elements, you're going to play, 8 or 9 games outside in Green Bay every year. You're going to play another in Chicago. So potentially 10 of your games every year are going to be outside and in potentially not ideal conditions. So that's where Pat O'Donnell has to punt, and he's done mostly a good job with that, specifically last year in Green Bay. He's going to have to earn his job, though, as well. We talked about Daniel Whelan yesterday, and if O'Donnell doesn't punt well, they're not going to be too excited and keen on paying O'Donnell more when he's over 30, and they could go potentially in a different direction with a younger punter. Number 39 is Karl Brooks. As you know, one of my favorite players from this last year's draft class. Immediately went and broke down the tape with him and fell in love. He is so fun. I love him as a potential stand-up outside player in basically any situation, as a potential run defender on early downs, inside defender / pass rusher / gap penetrator on passing downs. All of this is, of course, just hypothetical if he can come in and actually make a name for himself and show what he's capable of. He also got a shout out from Matt LaFleur already from what he was able to do, carrying over from rookie minicamps to minicamps and OTAs. So I'm excited about Karl Brooks, but he has a long way to go to prove himself in this league. Same thing about number 38, Anthony Johnson Jr., 7th round pick. Really excited about him. I think that is the popular pick to be the camp hero and, crazy 7th round pick story this year. Everyone's hoping that that's Anthony Johnson Jr. We've talked a million times already about the opportunity at safety. There's no reason Anthony Johnson Jr. can't earn that starting job. There's no reason that he's guaranteed a roster spot either. So that's what just makes this so fun about the safety competition, is it can go in a million different directions. There's a lot of talent there with Anthony Johnson. Love the fact that he's played corner in the past. Think that's going to serve him well, and I think he can be an even better playmaker at safety moving forward. Number 37 is Justin Hollins. Nice outside pass rusher. I thought he did a nice job once coming to Green Bay. Green Bay rewarded him with a contract and kept him in tow for this upcoming season. And he's going to have to battle for that number 5 spot, assuming Rashawn Gary is healthy, with Brenton Cox, Ladarius Hamilton, Jonathan Garvin, etc. But I would put Justin Hollins and Brenton Cox probably as the leaders in the clubhouse for that position as of right now. 36 might seem insanely high. I just didn't know where else to slot him, if I'm being honest, and that's Malik Heath. He was awesome. He was really, really good at OTAs. He could get to training camp, put the pads on, and we just never really hear of Malik Heath ever again. And he ends up maybe as a practice squad guy and has to just go from there. But I also think that there's a real world where he could legitimately see snaps as a wide receiver this year, like legitimate snaps. So this is another one where this team is so young and inexperienced and fun and full of potential that there's going to be guys that come out of nowhere that you're not expecting and have a real serious role on the team. And Malik Heath can be one of those guys. And there's going to be other guys that flame out and we have expectations for and just don't work. And that could be Malik Heath too. But I really liked what I saw, and I'm willing to put him this high as of right now, just based on what we saw in OTAs and minicamp so far. But he could fall back 30 spots. He could move up a handful of spots still, but I'm going to put him there as of right now. Number 35, one step ahead, is their 5th round wide receiver, and that's Dontavian Wicks. in the minimal stuff that we were able to see out of him before he had some injury issues, looked really quick. He has some nice size. I liked his route running. I liked his hands. Like, there's a lot to like there with Dontayvion Wicks. I'm hoping he, like Grant Dubose, is 100% healthy and ready to go for the start of camp, so there's no lingering issues, and he can just hopefully have a strong start and, start working on that rapport with, Sean Clifford, Jordan Love, etc. But he needs to get out there, but there's some real legitimate upside for Dontayvion Wicks. He comes in at 35. 34 is Carrington Valentine, maybe the rookie not named Lucas Van Ness or Luke Musgrave that I was most excited about after watching live and in person. Some real legitimate burst, great size, great height, not afraid of anything, has the swagger, has the confidence. Like, he's like built to be a corner in the NFL. And I have no idea how he fell to round 7. I have no idea how other teams were stupid enough to let him get to round 7. That includes Green Bay. But I'm so happy that he did, and I'm so happy Green Bay was able to pick him up. A long way to go as well. Rookie, unknown player. And, what happens with pads will be a huge step for him. He could win that. If Eric Stokes isn't ready for week 1, Carrington Valentine could be your number 4 corner week 1. And if any injuries happen, like, Carrington Valentine could be a starter on the outside if there's one other injury and Stokes isn't ready to go. Like, that's where we're at. And it's just an interesting, thought process to go through with who could be there. But he was a really, really fun player. Great pass breakup on Romeo Doubs in the end zone on a play. He's one that I have earmarked to keep an extra eye on in training camp. Number 33 is Tavarius Moore. Had some experience with San Francisco. I thought, they already started rotating him with Rudy Ford as a potential safety next to Darnell Savage, starting safety next to Darnell Savage. I think he's going to get his name in the conversation. He's had some interceptions, some forced fumbles in mini camps and OTAs, according to Matt LaFleur. So this is a player who's really in the, I think, probably the leg up with Rudy Ford as a potential starter across from Darnell Savage. But again, with Tavarius Moore, the guarantees aren't there. If he has any issues or can't pick up the system or whatever the case may be, he's not guaranteed a roster spot either. And that brings us to number 32, Rudy Ford. Same exact thing. Really liked what Rudy Ford brought to the table. He's a core special teams player. He plays with his hair on fire. I thought he did a nice job at safety. He came in at safety, made some big plays, kind of got benched again. They got back in there and started to play well again. He's probably what you would ideally want is kind of like a number 4 safety, where he's like your second backup and a core special teams guy. But if you have to play him, you're not super upset about it either, because he plays with such tenacity and aggressiveness. But with the state of Green Bay safety room, he could legitimately end up being that number 2 safety. And that's where he's been at OTAs and minicamps, switching with Tavarius Moore a little bit as well. And number 31, and our final one for today, is Colby Wooden. And I was really impressed with what he did. Like, defensive linemen are always really tough because the pads aren't on, and it's not like the offensive linemen and defensive linemen are going 100% at each other. But overall, I thought his effort was really good. I thought he really showed what he is capable of as a potential rotational defensive lineman. And he was right up there. And he was getting snaps with the ones with TJ Slayton, and Devontae Wyatt went out for a little bit. Colby Wooden played in his stead. And you didn't really miss a beat with it. So that's another one that I'm really excited to keep an eye on. This rookie class is really, really fun. I have no idea what they're going to ultimately be once those pads do come on. But this rookie class it has me a little giddy at this point, just from where we're at right now. There's plenty of time for them all to let me down, but right now I'm trying to have to temper expectations a bit, because I liked a lot of what I saw in OTAs minicamps and rookie minicamps. All right, that is going to do it for me today. Our final 30 will be coming tomorrow, number 30 through number 1. Make your predictions below on who you think is going to be in the top 5 on the list and who should be top 5 in order. I'll be looking at that, and we'll be right back here tomorrow to break it all down. Thanks so much, as always, for listening. Appreciate you guys so freaking much. I'll see you tomorrow, but until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.